Is it a combination of those things?
Decided to invest everything that
But when you observe yourself,
In that WR, that's visualization.
School of Medicine.
You wrote a lot about visualization, right? I mean, that WR, that's visualization. You're visualizing that world record. Talk about how that became part of your process and why you think it's so helpful.
thought precedes creation. It guides the energy in the physical world in order to attain certain specific behaviors. And for creative visualization to be fully effective, there are 3 requirements that need to be met. The first one is that you need to have the desire. You need to have that desire to achieve what you've decided to visualize. After having the desire, you need to have the certainty. You need to have the certainty that you will actually achieve this and that you will do it through visualization as well. And finally, you need to have the acceptance. The acceptance of whatever you're visualizing as a goal in your life. Because we all definitely here have those dreams that we would love to achieve, but they seem really far from achieving. However, visualization is the perfect tool that enables you to use your imagination in order to figure out what you really want. Work towards that specific goal and not get lost around the way. And it doesn't take that much effort. A scientist from India found that when you visualize yourself lifting your right hand, the same brain region is being activated that when you actually lift your right hand. However, research on visualization goes actually much further than that. So there's a strong scientific basis for how and why visualization actually works. There's a system in your brain which is called the reticular activating system, which is basically a network of neurons that are responsible for filtering information in and out of your brain. In other words, what this filter is doing is letting information come into your brain and blocking other information from entering. The way I like to think about this filter is as if it was Google. You get the opportunity to search trillions of web pages out there, right? However, you have specific keywords that allow you to filter some so you can select them or ignore others. The point of this reticular activating system is really important. Imagine all of the information that we're exposed to every day entering our brain. It would probably explode. So, the reticular activating system, let's put ourselves in an example. Let's say that you think that you hate public speaking and you're terrible at it. This system is going to spend all day trying to actually find evidence that confirms that specific belief.
You quickly realize that it does not take a lot of mental training and visualization in order to get better at anything. However, that mental training and visualization has to be performed in a very specific way. And today we will discuss exactly how to do mental training and visualization in the specific ways that allow it to complement the actual performance of a motor or cognitive skill to allow you to learn more quickly and to consolidate, that is, to keep that information in mind and body so that you can perform those cognitive tasks, music tasks, motor tasks, etc., for long periods of time without ever forgetting how to do them. All of mental training and visualization relies on what I consider really the holy grail of our brain and nervous system, and that's neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is our nervous system, which of course includes the brain, the spinal cord, and all the connections between the brain and spinal cord and the organs and tissues of the body, and then all the neural connections back from the organs and tissues of the body to the brain and spinal cord. So the whole thing in both directions has the ability to change in response to experience in ways that are adaptive. That is, that allows us to do things that we could not do before. And by doing those things, or by being able to perform those mental operations, we can do better in the world that we live in. We can perform new tasks, we can think new thoughts, we can come up with novel solutions to pre-existing problems that before really vexed us and that we couldn't overcome. All of that is considered neuroplasticity. So today what I'm going to cover is a brief summary of what neuroplasticity is, that is how it occurs in the brain and body. This is extremely important to understand if you're going to use mental training and visualization. Then I'm going to talk about what happens in our brain and body when we do mental visualization in a dedicated way. Many people have heard, perhaps, that when you imagine something happening, that your brain doesn't know the difference between that imagination of the thing happening and the real thing happening. Turns out that is not true. It is simply not true. However, there is somewhat of an equivalence between a real experience and an imagined experience. And we'll talk about the difference between those and how that can be leveraged in order to get the most out of mental training and visualization.
Now, as a neuroscientist, what do you attribute when people talk about visualization? And visualization is it's a huge factor in improving technical skill, specifically martial arts, which is I'm a big fan of, obviously. Martial arts, when you visualize, people who visualize, who sit down and like go over their body, going through the motions and doing things, those people perform better. They perform better. They learn quicker. What do you attribute that to? Do you think it's the same thing as what's happening when you're sleeping, just maybe to a lesser extent?
I think it's
learning techniques, specifically martial arts techniques. My good friend Eddie Bravo, who's a world famous jiu-jitsu instructor, he's always comparing it to tying your shoe. And he said, do you know how, like, when you were a little kid and you're trying to figure out how to tie your shoe, it's an extremely difficult thing to do. You're like, how do I do this? And you put that down and you do loops. Like, I'm watching my 7-year-old daughter go through that right now. But now, as a grown man, when I tie my shoe, I could just be talking, what? Oh yeah, we're gonna go tomorrow. And I'll do it. I don't even know what I did. If you tried to ask me to explain how I tie my shoe, I'd be like, how do I tie my shoe? Like, I don't even know how I do it, because I have it in there. And the idea with martial arts is you've got to be, all of your techniques have to be automatic. Someone extends the arm, you instantly hook it and go into the arm bar. You have to have these paths like so drilled in that you don't even know you're doing them until it's over.
Yeah. So
I mean, for me, when I got to a swim meet, there's nothing that I can control at that point, right? I can control what I do and how I prepare, sort of getting up behind the block and just racing. I can't control what anybody else does. So for me, know how the race could go, how I don't want the race to go, and in a perfect world, how the race should go. Because it all goes back to preparation. If you're not preparing yourself before the meet, you're not going to get a time you deserve. So for me, I have to make sure I'm doing all the work leading up to a big meet so that I get behind the block and I don't have to think about anything else. I'm not worried about how I prepared. So I started visualizing at like 13, 14, just so everything around me was taken care of when I got to a meet, so I could be completely relaxed. So when I put my headphones on, all I'm thinking about is the music. I get to go up and just do what I practiced to do. All of those countless hours of staring at the black line at the bottom of the pool, that was for this moment. So I just never really thought when I got behind the block and let everything do what was supposed to happen. If I didn't get the results that I wanted, then I would just go back to the drawing board. And that's really just how I worked my whole life. But I mean, visualizing just, it just mentally prepares you and you can kind of check that box off. And I think that's what we wanted to do. Every time we got to a major international competition, we wanted to check off as many boxes as we could. Because if we did that, then what else do we have to worry about? Everything else is just going to happen naturally like it should.
I mean, the biggest thing I think that really separated me through my career was my mental game. Everything that was in between my ears. Like, for me, it's just, I eventually got to the point where I was competing against myself because I was so hard on myself. And, you know, for me to improve, I had to get stronger mentally, and I had to find a way to do it. And I think my coach helped me get through that process and learn more. So for me, like, when I would visualize, I visualize every single, I mean, getting up to a meet, I would visualize probably a month or so in advance, just of what could happen, what I want to happen, and what I don't want to happen. Because when it happened, I was prepared for it.
When you observe the world, you see people, you see houses, you see the sky, you see tangible objects. But when you observe yourself within, you see moving images, a world of images, generally known as fantasies. Yet these fantasies are facts. You see, it is a fact that a man has such and such a fantasy. And it is such a tangible fact, for instance, that when a man has a certain fantasy, another man may lose his life. Or a bridge is built. These houses were all fantasies. Everything you do here, all of the houses, everything was fantasy to begin with. And fantasy has a proper reality. That is not to be forgotten. Fantasy is not nothing. It is, of course, not a tangible object, but it is a fact nevertheless. It is, a form of energy, despite the fact we can't measure it. It is a manifestation of something. And that is a reality. That is just a reality as, for instance, the peace treaty of Versailles or something like that. It is no more, you can't show it. But it has been a fact. And so the psychical events are facts, are realities. And when you observe the stream of images within, you observe an aspect of the world within. And so, you see, the man who is going by the external world, by the influences of the external world, say society or perceptions, sense perceptions, thinks that he is more valid, because this is valid, this is real. And the man who goes by the subjective factor is not valid because subjective factor is nothing. Yeah. No, that man is just as well based because he is bases himself upon the world from within. And so he is quite right, even if he says, oh, there is nothing but my fantasy.